Okay, let's move along. We finished about the burning of the chametz and okay, let's move on with Erev Pesach and get into the actual Seder because that's going to take time. Okay.
Seder or
getting into the Seder. Seder also takes time. Okay, number one, Erev Pesach is really a Yom Tov. So therefore the Gemara says really that like Erev Pesach after midday, you really shouldn't do certain types of work that you wouldn't do on Chol HaMoed. You know, just say Chol HaMoed, you don't do certain halachos. So Erev Pesach after, because then everybody brought the carbon Pesach, so it's a big Yom Tov. Whether in the morning people do work or not is dependent on the custom. Some people do, some people don't, the Gemara says. But what's important for people to know is if you want to take a haircut before Pesach, you have to take it before 12:52 on Monday morning, Erev Pesach. If you don't take it by then you have to take a haircut from a non-Jew. You can't take a haircut from a Jew Erev Pesach after midday. Cutting nails, if you're cutting your nails for Yom Tov, which you really halachically should, you should also cut them before midday. Again, I think it's 12:52. But if you didn't, nails you can cut afterwards also. You have to cut the nails before midday. But haircuts, if you didn't take a haircut, then you can't take a haircut actually until, only through a guy.
You cut the Friday before. Can you cut it during Chol HaMoed?
No. The only time you can cut nails during Chol HaMoed if you cut them out of Yom Tov. Okay. Not before that. Okay, now Erev Pesach, like we said, we learned already the time of eating, the time of burning, and all that stuff. Now, it is a custom in many places. I mean, in LA, I don't know if they still, probably, I think there's one place maybe that still does it. There's what's called matzah mitzvahs, or mitzvah matzahs. Mitzvah matzahs. Huh? The Kapsim still does it. I knew he did it. Anyway, there's an inyan of baking matzahs Erev Pesach after midday, and those matzahs he used for the Seder. 3 matzahs. But then, the problem is, then you have to be extremely, extremely careful, because then chametz is forbidden already. And you're going to mess up, then you really have a big problem with the dough. I mean, you have to be extremely, extremely careful. In fact, in halachic it says, and that was the minig in Lubavitch, that they would sing actually Hallel. During the time of baking matzahs, they would be singing Hallel. And it's brought down that the Rabbi Rashab, if he had to correct something in the baking, so then he would even talk out in the middle of Hallel, because it wasn't with a brach or anything, he was just saying it Hallel. He would do to correct them from doing what they need to do.
It was without brach.
Yeah, no bracha, of course. Okay. Now, the inyan of the Seder is you should start the Seder as soon as you're allowed to, as soon as possible. Why? Because one of the main mitzvahs of the night is Vigada to Levincha, talking to your children, and you don't want the kids falling asleep at the Seder. In fact, in halacha it's brought down, was a minig, they would give out nuts and candies to the kids at a Pesach. That's what they had in those days, as nash, just to keep the kids excited that they should stay up at the Seder. One of the reasons why there's a universal custom of kids stealing the afikoman, and then when you need it, you break the middle matzah, so they already steal it then, and then they need it for the afikoman at the end of basically the end of the Seder, almost. So basically that's the purpose of keeping the kids up. But in the Chabad circles, the custom is the kids don't steal the afikoman. And the Rebbe writes the reason for that is, again, chinuch is a very important aspect. What we think is unimportant is extremely, extremely important. If the kids steal the afikoman, using the word stealing, is based on the Gemara. The Gemara uses the word that the kids steal the matzah. So if you're educating a kid, steal the afikoman and we're going to reward you for it. What happens? The kid, you want the matzah back, you have to promise me a present, a toy, whatever it is. So in other words, in chinuch, what you're really doing is you're teaching the kid, steal, and you'll get rewarded for it, which is terrible chinuch. So therefore, what is done in Chabad, generally speaking, if you have little kids, the kids don't steal the Afrikaner. The parent hides the Afrikaner. And if the kid finds it, then they get a prize. Because then you're not teaching them to steal, you're teaching them to find. What?
Stealing the mitzvah.
Huh?
Stealing the mitzvah.
You're not stealing a mitzvah, you're stealing.
What happens if they steal from
If somebody, by the way, halachically, if somebody steals matzah, they're not fulfilling the obligation of matzah. Not only do they not fulfill the obligation of matzah, when they make a bracha, they're making a bracha in vain because they didn't do the mitzvah. What?
Are you allowed to bake matzahs on Pesach?
Yes. Technically you could, but again, then you can only bake what you need for that particular day. You can bake more than for the other days. I mean, nobody bakes matzahs today that I know of on Pesach itself.
What about here for the land?
Technically you could, but you have to be very careful. There's no chametz.
Huh? Matzah doesn't taste better if it's wet.
Matzah sometimes tastes better. People put it into the oven to crisp it up a little bit.
Problem is where you find fresh Pesach flour.
Yeah, somebody asked me that, can I bake my own matzah? I'll buy flour in the store, and I'll bake my own matzah. The problem with that is, flour that you buy in the store is chametz because it's treated, and it's real chametz, not a little chametz. Flour that you buy in the store today, unless if it's shmura matzah, the flour from shmura matzah, which, by the way, just an interesting point. They go out, the wheat grows in Arizona. They go out in the summer already, before the wheat ripens completely. And they harvest it before it ripens completely. And then they store it in special containers, in special bags, in special places, that it shouldn't get contact with moisture. Because if it gets contacted with moisture, then all of that is not kosher lePesach flour. So you have two different types of shmura matzah. Sometimes you see on a container, shmura mishas ktsira. That means it's guided from the time it was harvested. Other matzah, which is not as strict, do it shmura mishas tchina. From the time it's ground, the wheat, into flour, then it's gathered from that point on. Now, where makbid should be, and that's most people that have shmura matzah, try to have it mishas ksira. Now, just to explain the din of like this. Once wheat gets wet, it could become chametz. But that's only once it's cut from the ground. Now, because if not, it can't grow. How is it supposed to grow? Wheat, in order to grow, you need water. So while the wheat is still connected to the ground, obviously when it rains or it's irrigated, there's no problem. But the din is, once it's ripened, even if it's not cut, it's halachically considered cut. Once it's ripe,
Fully grown,
no, that
ready to be cut.
And you don't cut it, so because it's ready to be cut and you're not cutting, it's like it's cut anyway. So then what happens is, if that rains, it rains now on that field, when it's ripe already, it's all going to become chametz. So what do? They harvest it before it's completely ripened. And then they watch it. That's the whole in shmura matzah, shmura mel, shmura flour. But today you go to the store and you buy a 5 pound bag of flour. It's real chametz. Can't make matzah with it. Has to be treated as real chametz. You have to sell it in the chametz. I mean, it's real chametz. Anyway.
How is it being watched?
Watch to make sure it's no wet.
Somebody stays there all night?
No, they put it into containers and people guard it and make sure that there's no moisture, no leaks, no, things like that.
Put a seal on it.
They put a seal on it, whatever the method is that they use to make sure that it's guarded. Doesn't necessarily mean a person has to be there 24/7. It's guarded and protected through, plastics and bags that there's no way it can possibly get wet.
The Jew has to be there to watch them, to ground it and
Yeah. You kidding? The matzah bakery guys. In fact, in a lot of matzah bakers, I'll give you an example. The Satmar Rebbe himself goes to the field when they're cutting it. They have mashgichim that go. Every bakery has a mashgich that goes to the. Usually it grows in Arizona, in America. So they go there and they make sure that the wheat is, good and not getting wet, and it's cut before and it's guarded. Not that you don't need a shame of a person. It's guarded. So guarded means it's put in containers that it can't get wet. Okay, so now we went off a little bit. Now the Seder is not allowed to begin before nightfall.
What?
The Seder is not allowed to begin before nightfall. Why? Why not? Good question.
So right now, you can.
Why can you not begin the Seder before nightfall? Because concerning matzahs, the Torah says that Balayla you have to eat it at night. So the biblical mitzvah of matzah is to eat it at night. Night means after nightfall. Now when the Chachamim instituted the various different things at the Seder, like the 4 cups of wine, are rabbinic nature, right? But when they instituted the rabbinic takana, they made it similar to the biblical takana. And therefore the Chachamim said, the first cup, which is Kiddush, which is mamish the beginning of the Seder, you can't do before night, because by matzah it says balayla, and therefore we liken the 4 cups to matzah, so therefore you can't begin the Seder before nightfall. Here in LA, the earliest you can begin the Seder is 8 o'clock. Candlelighting is 7:12. It means sundown is 7:30. You can wait. It's in Nisan, whatever. Half an hour in LA, you could be makel. Ideally, you shouldn't start the Seder until 8:15. But 8 o'clock, but somebody's allowed to start the Seder, but you can't start earlier because the first cup is going to. But because we want to make sure to start as soon as possible, so therefore the din is like this. Before you go to shul, even the table should be set. Everything should be set to go, except the Seder plate. The Seder plate is set up after you come home from shul, right before you start the Seder. That's our minig, that we set up the Seder plate after Ma'ariv. Halachically, you can set it up earlier. You can have everything on the Seder plate ready to go. But our minig is that the Seder plate, as we will discuss probably not today, but the Seder plate, you have to organize right after, when you come home, right before you're about to start the Seder. Now, Ma'ariv though, the first night of Shavuos, you can daven a little bit earlier, because you could bring Yom Tov in earlier. You just have a question with Shema or whatever. So, candlelighting, give you an example. Candlelighting this year here in LA, Monday night of Pesach is 7:12. Okay, now, technically, on Shabbos, you must light on time. Because once sundown comes, you're not allowed to light Shabbos candles. But on Yom Tov, technically, you're allowed to light after Yom Tov begins from a pre-existing flame. Right? You just have candle, fire's on, and you take a candle. Many people have a custom. It's not Chabad custom. Many people have a custom when they come home from shul, before they start the Seder, the woman goes and lights the Yom Tov candles. Makes the bracha ladik Yom Tov and Shechianu, the 2 brachas and candles. But Al Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in the laws of Shabbos writes that even though Yom Tov you could technically light later from a pre-existing flame, but nevertheless not to differentiate between Shabbos and Yom Tov. So the first night of Yom Tov, our custom is, if possible, you light the regular time. In other words, you light 7:12, you make the bracha Yom Tov and Shechianu, and then that's it. So now when you come, so Ma'ariv is Ma'ariv of Shalosh Regalim, but in the Chassidic world, there's a very strong, powerful minig that you say complete hollow both nights of Pesach, first night and second night. It's interesting, the Chassidim in the time of the Alter Rebbe had a lot of self-sacrifice for that aspect of saying Hallel. By the Chassidim they said Hallel, by the Litvish, by the Misnagdim they dafke didn't say Hallel, because the Ramah says You know, Bisman Zeh Einoi, we don't, B'mokum Shalom or whatever, Einoi, we don't do it. So, in fact, there's stories with Alter Rebbe, with the Chassidim in the shuls, and after everybody left, they went to the Yomid, and somebody said Halal, and then the guy found out about it, and he banned the Chassidim, they threw him out, or fights, and everything. But in our circles, and not only Chabad, in all the Chassidish circles, they say complete Halal both nights at Ma'ariv. So you'd have a Ma'ariv, at the end of Ma'ariv, before Aleinu, you say complete Halal. What? Halal you say during the Seder, we'll get there, but then it's divided into half. You don't say complete Halal at one time. The first two chapters of Halal you say before the second cup, and then the rest of Halal you say after benching in the third cup. So Halal is split. That's why one of the reasons you don't make a bracha on Halal at the Seder, because it's cut in half with a separate. Huh? No, everybody says Halal at the Seder. The question is, do you say Halal after Ma'ariv? Some do, and our custom is we do, very strongly do, and a lot of people don't.